Sure. And let me first say thank you so very much for the invitation. Thank you for having me. I pray that everything that you do is blessed, everything that you touch expands. So thank you again so much.
Welcome to the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. Now, here's your host, author, speaker, entrepreneur, Cornell Jermaine.
This is not a demon. This is a mental stronghold. There are mental things that keep us bound. Yes, do we know that there are spiritual principalities? We do. But we love to blame stuff on the devil. And he's sitting back looking at you like, this ain't me, dog. I love to take credit for this. But I've done enough in your life. I've done enough to keep you bound. You have made the decision to not be free. So this is a mental thing that is taking place. Sometimes our prayer can be, Father, give me more money. Our prayer can be, Father, give me another house. Our prayer can't even be, Father, give me another job. But I have begun to pray, Father, set me free from me. Set me free from my own mind. Set me free from my own stuff. Set me free from my own issues.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. I have a special guest. She is a published author, marketplace leader, and an ordained clergyman. Please help me welcome the lovely Miss Karri Turner. Karri, how are you today?
I'm hanging in there. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. We're glad you're on. I'm so excited to talk to you. I want to talk about what the work that you do in the kingdom, get some insight into your philosophy for life and all of that good stuff. But let's give our listeners some groundwork. Give us some insight into your beginnings. What was life like for you as a little girl?
Well, life was really, really hard, quite honestly. Life was tough. My mom got pregnant with me when she was 18 years old. Her and my dad were only a few years apart, so they were very, very young. And a majority of my life, she has raised me, really all of my life, on her own. And so I have not had, I did not have the easiest childhood. There was a lot of hardship, a lot of pain, a lot of difficulty. I grew up seeing abuse sexually, physically, just a lot of different things, and so all of those things are a part of my narrative. I can honestly say now that I have no regrets about any of those experiences, because I think that they all helped to shape the woman that I became today. But it was nowhere near easy, and I definitely didn't have, I didn't have a silver spoon or wooden spoon, more like a plastic spoon on a good day. So, it wasn't always the best, but definitely built a lot of character in me because of it.
Well, many we see. And I know that's oftentimes a disadvantage for the people that have gone through something, but many times we see the glory and the glitz and the glam, and we see God has shined on you, and He's taking you to major heights in ministry and in business.
Yeah.
But many times people don't get to see that behind that backstory.
Yeah.
Give us a little insight into, I guess, that breaking point where you realized, okay, I have to take this thing into my own hands and make a difference for myself. What was that process like?
Well, let me first say, I absolutely agree with you. I think that there are certain things that people see, and I think they try to surmise your life based off of whatever blessings they see occurring. But that's definitely not the case. And I want anybody to know, if you ever see me being blessed, just know that I toiled for whatever that was. There's some seeds, some tears, somewhere in the ground for whatever it is that you see, and it did not happen or come overnight. And so, I think that there have been a number of different things, along my journey. I always knew, even in the space that I was growing up in, I always had a praying mom. and I had a relationship with God very, very, very young. And so I think that made the difference for me. I don't know if I can pinpoint a specific moment or time. I think that there have been a culmination of events, a culmination of heartbreaks, a culmination of disappointments that eventually just kind of led me to a point where I knew that there was a greater purpose and a greater call on my life. And the truth of the matter is you can fully be operating in your call and still have to experience those things. So you're never exempt. You never get to a point where you just completely arrive and you never have to deal with something. That's not the course of my life right now. Even as I'm speaking to you, I have to bury my father on Friday. He was not ill. There was nothing wrong with him per se. He just transitioned, and we don't even know why even now. And so I say all of that to say that even in the midst of what people seem to be elevation in your life, there are still things that God is walking you through in the background. And so, I don't have one particular experience, but there have absolutely been many that have helped shaped me making, my decision to just move forward. I think the difference between me and somebody else might just very well be that I've just decided to not quit. It's not that I haven't thought about it. It's not that I haven't kicked and screamed and cried and fussed and been angry with God and felt so many different things. But, after I'm done being mad, after I'm done being sad, after I'm done crying, I wipe my tears, I figure it out, and I get back up because I know that God is not done. And I just believe that he doesn't bring us to a certain point to leave us. And it's the same thing with me and anybody else that's listening. So it's been a lot of different things that have kind of helped shape who I am right now.
Wow, amazing. And thank you so much for even keeping this commitment during this process. My prayers and thoughts are with you and your family. I really appreciate
Thank you
that.
so much. Thank you so much.
When it comes to, because you're an ordained clergyman, and many times, I guess in years past, we're seeing women much more liberated in ministry now.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, were you apprehensive going into that ministry as a woman and being such a leader? Were you apprehensive at all?
Well, not even just the fact of going into it as a woman and a leader. I think that there is apprehension anytime you are saying yes to the call. Do you know what I mean? I'm leery of people who just run, who are just running up like, okay, God, I want to do this. Because most people who are walking in the, in the office of ministry as relates to being, ordained or fully moving in that, there is some nervousness. There is apprehension. And in most cases, you don't even want to do it. So I'm always frightened of people who, for some reason, just wake up and decide that it's just what they want to do, because with most people, there is a weight and there is a burden of the call, because people are not just running. I say this all of the time. I wouldn't just run into the front of the line to be like, this is what I want to do. You know what I mean? I wasn't running to sacrifice my life and have to live a certain type of way. It can be a very difficult thing. Yes, there is beauty in it. Yes, there is beauty in surrender and serving the Lord, but there are also some things that just ain't fun about the process of doing this. And so, I think, for me, there was definitely apprehension. Number one, because I have always, of course, I've been in church since I was 7 years old. It was always a very safe space for me. And so, but I did grow up in a very traditional missionary Baptist church where I did not see women preachers. Now, I saw women speak on the floor. I saw women called evangelists. I never in the years of my life had I ever seen a woman ordained as a pastor. I had never seen a woman mount the pulpit to preach, and she definitely was not called a preacher. She was called a speaker. And so in taking in account all of the things that I had grown up with, in addition to the fact that, I don't technically maybe look like a preacher. I may not necessarily even sound like one. You're walking into a call or industry or a profession, for lack of better words, where you can't really pinpoint a blueprint, because you can't really find anybody, quite honestly, at least for me. I couldn't find anyone that looked like me or talked like me or dressed like me or moved like me. I could not find it. And so there was nobody that I could look to be like, okay, this is how I could do this. And there were plenty of women that I looked to who have done it, you know, in their own way, in whatever that looks like, where I was able to grab little pieces from. But yeah, it's uncomfortable because, you know, when you can find at least somebody that can be a point of reference for you, it makes it a little bit easier. But when you can't even find that and you're walking into an area that's still in 2019, many denominations don't even believe that women should be ordained or that they should be preaching or whatever it might be. Still to this day, it's always funny to me that we can believe that women can bring life into the world, but we're still questioning whether or not she can bring forth the word of God. That's a whole nother conversation. But nevertheless, yeah, so you're thinking about all of those things. And so, yeah, there was definitely a level of trepidation. There was a level of insecurity. There was a level of many different things. But what I do know for sure is, you know, when you become confident about what God has called you to do in the way that he has called you to do it, you know, there is a way that you can look in the face of fear. You can look in the face of critics. You can let people say whatever they want to say, and you will still be okay. You know, it doesn't mean that it may not affect you, but you know how to handle it and you know how to manage it and what to do with it. So, yeah, you know, I'm sure myself, like many other people, you know, most days are like, God, are you really serious? Is this really what you want me to do? Because, you know, it's not always good, but I think, you know, the outcome of knowing that you're doing the work of the Lord and that he's with you and that his hand is on you and that people are inspired and their lives are changed and they're focused more on him and pursuing what they've been put on this earth to do, it truly makes the difference and it makes it worth it.
Absolutely. And it's surprising in this time of Me Too and women's empowerment that there are still women who are still intimidated and still apprehensive about things when it comes to fulfilling the call on their life or their purpose. I'm curious, if you had to give somebody that may be in that position one key thing or two key things that they need to do in order to get to that place of confidence and boldness, what would you give them?
Yeah, I would, you know, I honestly would just tell them, you know, at some point it's going to either be God or man. And you can either follow the rules that men have set before you and be okay with living a life that only reaches a certain point because of that, or you can trust in the one who created you, you can trust in the one who called you, and you can trust in the one who affirmed you before you even got here. And so what I would tell them is just to be bold enough to honor what God has placed on their life, to be bold and courageous enough to fully walk in that, because it takes courage to, you know, walk in something that people are telling you that you should not do and giving you all of these reasons why you shouldn't do it. So I would tell them to just first really truly seek the Lord and be sure, be sure about their vocation, be sure about their call. And once there's a level of assurance, you know, walk in that. You know, be unapologetic about how you do it. As long as you know that God is with you and that he is leading you and that he is guiding you, you got to do it. And it just takes a level of confidence, because the truth is they'll never really have any peace if they don't. You know, they'll never really live the way that they fully want to live. They'll live a life that is just below, you know, what God has for them. And it can be scary. But, you know, either you are going to live in fear or you are going to operate in faith. And sometimes, you know, being loyal to God means being disloyal to man. But at the end of the day, you know, there is one person. We got one boss. We got one person that we are held accountable to. And, you know, and at the end, I always tell people, I don't think that the Lord is going to ask us who we slept with. I don't think he's going to ask us, you know, who we lied on, you know, if we woke up late, if we got to church late. He is going to ask us, what did we do with the talents that he placed within us? What did we do with the gifts that he has given us? Because our Father is expecting a return on what he has placed in our life. He is an investor, and we are responsible. It's not an option of whether or not you want to walk in it. You are responsible responsible for fulfilling the call on your life and providing a return for that in which he has placed in you. So I would tell them just to think about it that way. There is something that they have to offer God for what he has placed in them, and they will have to give account to that. And so that in and of itself should at least provide some level of courage for them to be able to boldly move forward in that.
Well said, well said. Now, speaking of being responsible for what God has given you and the call on your life, you have so much going on in your ministry and business. I want to cover a couple of things just to give our listeners more insight into what it is that you do.
Sure.
You talk a lot about ministry and marketplace, and that's something that I personally think is so important, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it. Give us some insight into that whole concept.
Yeah, so the whole concept is biblical. The Bible tells us, Jesus said to them, do business. Go occupy and do business. And so, again, I believe that it is something that is a mandate. What I know for certain is that there are so many women, there are so many men who God has called to operate in the space of ministry, whether that's in the traditional sense of preaching, teaching, serving in some type of capacity in church or whatever your faith community is. And then many of us leave that faith community and we are, CEOs, we are vice presidents, we, work, we do business, we have our own businesses, we're entrepreneurs. And so, we are navigating both spheres. We're leaving one area and going into another area. And for many of us, those worlds correlate in a lot of different ways. And so, for me, my goal is to be able to, empower women and men as much as possible to be able to understand that there is a call for us, that we can move in both spheres and they can connect and they can both speak to our call. They can speak to, how we operate and how we even share God with the world. And so, there are times where I literally leave a pulpit as a clergywoman and then step into an office as a CEO. And the great part about my life is that I don't have to put God down in either sense. I don't have to put off Christ because I'm a CEO. They correlate. They go together in so many different ways. And so, really it's just about helping people to understand that it is okay to be dominant and to be, powerful, to be authentic, and to move in both of these spheres and to honor God in the process of doing it.
I'm curious, and when you're taking off your ministry hat, putting on your business hat, do you find sometimes you have to maybe be a little more, subtle in how you move? Because sometimes I see people in ministry who go into business and they take the same strategies, the same ideas, the same behaviors and processes into ministry. And sometimes you get into rooms with people that don't understand your church lingo.
So I will say this. There is a difference between strategies and processes that we use in business across the board and church lingo. So this is the thing. There are strategies that we use in business in the marketplace that we also use in ministry. They are cross-sectional. You can use them across the board. We need them in both. But I think, as you said, there also is a language of business and there's also a language of church, for lack of a better word, that we use that, no, I don't take necessarily into the boardroom. I can go anywhere, and I say that confidently. I can stand in a pulpit. I can stand in a Fortune 500 company. I can stand in the White House. I can stand in a homeless shelter. I can go anywhere, and I think a great leader should be able to go anywhere. And I can represent God anywhere without ever even opening my mouth to even say his name. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's a way that you are able to move in excellence, period, where you don't have to be in a boardroom necessarily quoting scriptures and laying hands on people for people to know that there is something different about you. There is something different in how you speak and how you articulate yourself, how you move, how you connect, how you listen to other people. So yes, you definitely kind of take hats on and put hats down. There are some things that you can use in both spheres. There are other things that you cannot. Wisdom is being able to know how to navigate any space that you go into so that you are being successful and not having to compromise who you are and your core beliefs when you're doing it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I just had to ask you that because I know you have that mindset, but because it sometimes it gets to the core of me and kind of agitates
a lot
me
of
a
people
little bit.
don't. They don't.
And then they're taking. They have opportunities, or people present things for them, and they put on. They utilize faith as a opportunity to be lazy, in a sense. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Mm-hmm. And I just think sometimes it gets kind of blurry for people. They don't know that there is a process and a protocol when it comes to business. So I wanted to get your perspective on that. I'm glad you weighed in on that. I'm curious about your mission, Left Behind the Collar. Oh, no, Life Behind the Collar is the name of it. It's an initiative that you have. Tell us about that work.
Yeah, so Life Behind the Collar was really birthed out of all of my own crazy experiences, some good, some bad, some dumb mistakes that I've made, and just the fact that, I am, some people may not know, but I have a MDiv, so a master's in divinity. So I went to seminary, and I'm currently working on a doctorate in ministry with a concentration in Christian leadership and renewal. So, I have had the opportunity in some ways to be, to be formally educated and to be formally trained in theology. But this is what I know for sure. There are some things that I have had to figure out about what life looks like after I take off the collar that nobody told me when I was sitting in seminary. Nobody told me these things, and sometimes these are the things that can either make or break you as an individual, and they can make or break you as a person who moves in ministry. And so Life Behind the Collar is just really my heart behind wanting to be transparent and to be honest, to talk to other women and men who move in ministry, but who also are, it deals with the humanity of who you are and what that looks like, the mistakes that you make, how you bounce back, and, how you navigate in certain spaces, giving, the call and the capacity, I will say that, that you move in. So Life Behind the Collar is just really kind of taking the honest, real, raw, and honest look at, what life really looks like after you, after you step down from doing the work of ministry. Okay, so you still have yourself. You still have real issues. You still have real problems. You still have personal things that you are navigating through. And I think that that's important to talk about. I think, we've made ministry on some levels look so sexy. I mean, it's just like, you can blow up and have a church, and your face can be on all these flyers, and maybe you can have all this money and travel all of the time and have these huge churches, but that's not always the case. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's so much that goes along with that, and I think that it also speaks to us seeing a spike in many ministry leaders who are committing suicide and who are dealing with depression, all of these other things. There has to be an outlet for people, particularly leaders in ministry, to talk about real things that they're dealing with so that we can, know that we are not isolated in dealing with them and, be able to get the help and support that we need to grow.
Absolutely. You said a couple of things that I want to weigh in on, but I have to deal with that whole piece with the ministry leaders, because there is something in the atmosphere spiritually where some of these leaders are really depressed, and they're functioning every Sunday, every Wednesday, every week, traveling. I think, and I say this all the time within my circle, but I think it's important to say it now, that as a lay member, as a parishioner of a church, you have to understand that the person that stands in front of you every week is just as human as you are. They've been endowed with the anointing and power to function in the gift that they've given. But when they go back home, they bleed and they hurt just like you. And I think sometimes we make them superhuman. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I've worked closely with so many great men and women of God, and I see it. So I'm constantly lifting them up and keeping them in prayer, and also checking the members when they get out beside themselves.
Good
what I'm saying?
Good for you. Yeah.
because
sometimes the membership alone makes it hard. I have friends who are single, who are afraid to even date, who are afraid to have a life. I know people who won't take sabbaticals, who won't travel because, my members don't. We got to do better. Listen, you want to take a vacation, don't you? then surely you ought to understand that you're a pastor or you're a leader. As a matter of fact, you should be pushing them to do it. It's just healthy balance. So you're absolutely right about that.
Yes, absolutely. Now, something else you mentioned, and it kind of ties into the life behind the collar. People look at a woman like yourself, well put together, well-spoken business leader, and they often wonder, how does a woman like that handle relationship? You know, if she's single, you know, how does she approach a relationship, or how does she handle that whole process? Being such a powerful woman in business and ministry, you know, give us some insight on how you have, or how you do, or what you think a person like yourself should do in handling, I guess, a relationship with a man.
So I won't give recommendations in terms of what somebody else should do, because, child, I have not mastered it, darling. So I can only speak from, I don't want to give nobody no advice, but I can only speak to my own experiences. You know, some people don't know that I was married. So at the time I had married my college sweetheart. I got married pretty young, I think about 26, and started life in that type of way. I don't have any children or that type of thing. But of course that ended in divorce. And so I think this is the 8th year now that I have been single. And, you know, there are some times where it's very hard, because I believe without a shadow of a doubt that, I'm a wife. And so, it's kind of weird navigating through this type of space, especially when I have been married before, and I have just made some terrible decisions, as relates to dating. And sometimes it doesn't mean that all people are bad. It just means that everybody is not for you. But the core of who I am is relational. The core of who I am is about, marriage and partnership. I will be one woman that you never hear walking around talking about she don't need no man and all that other kind of stuff. That is just not even the core of who I am. I value it, and I see the gift and the blessing in it. So with, in saying all of that to say, I think that I have learned the hard way that, I can't, this season of singleness that God has called me to for a reason, and I have to embrace whatever that is and do whatever He's asking me to do during this time, even if I don't always like it. I think in dating, quite honestly, I have not dated it's been a long time, and I am right now not dating intentionally. And so anybody that comes into my life, number one, Jesus will have had to send Michael and all the archangels to tell me that it's somebody that I even need to date, because otherwise I'm just not. But, I have restricted myself in it so that I can just be clear and I can be sober, because when you have enough poor experiences, it can make you bitter and you're hard-hearted about matters of the heart, and I just don't want to be that way. And so I say with me, I have decided to be intentional about taking a break from doing it. Secondly, because I have had some crazy experiences, there are certain people in certain industries that I'm saying that I personally just have made a decision to not date. It's very hard when you're a woman moving in ministry to date, particularly other people in ministry, because quite honestly, the industry is so small. So even though you think, we may have great things in common, we're doing the same thing, and you can't really necessarily always do that, because as a woman, the rules are just different. Quite honestly, a man can date multiple people, even if they're not at the same time. He can date multiple people in the same industry, and people may not look at him in a derogatory way, whereas a woman, you can't do the same thing, because you're naturally labeled as a whore, naturally labeled as loose. Even if you're not, you don't have to be sleeping with people. It's just the perception of what it looks like. And so, I've just decided personally that it's just something that I don't want to do. And it just doesn't necessarily work for me. Is it to say never? I don't know. I don't want to say that, but I will say that I'm just cautious, about it going forward. And just really, just trying to be wise in who I'm connected to, whether it's romantically or even in friendships, just being smarter about what that looks like. And, and that's just kind of where I am. So I would say I wouldn't necessarily give anybody advice, but I would tell them to be true to whatever space God has them in and honor that space. Learn what you need to learn so that you can move on to the next level. And if your desire is to be single, then amen. If your desire is at some point to be married, then to hold on to that vision, because eventually, the right person will come in your life and it'll come to pass.
I think that is great wisdom. And I say that because a lot of women who may have been in bad relationships or bad things don't even know how to discipline themselves enough to intentionally say, this is what I'm going to do, So I think, I think that in and of itself is great wisdom for our listeners, because I know a lot of people who should intentionally stop and take some time for themselves, but I mean, for whatever reason, they like relationship, and sometimes it's still false. So I think that's wisdom.
Thank
Wow.
you. Well, listen,
well,
when they keep seeing them same demons in different bodies, they'll stop. When they keep seeing it, at some point in time, they'll stop. I'm telling you, because you'll start to see the same spirit in a different person. Do you know what I'm saying? And at some point in time, when they have been wounded enough, when they become exhausted enough, when they become broken enough, they'll stop. So, they'll get it at some point. It takes everybody, different experiences to reach, whatever space they get to. But listen, I'm on a break.
Wow, I hear you. Well, you do a lot of work with women and trying to evangelize. I really see that as evangelism, what you do.
Sure.
Give us some insight. I'm curious as to, in your work with the women, what are some of the things that you're seeing, the issues that they're having and constantly coming up in your work with women in ministry?
Yeah, I think, I think a part of it is what you just mentioned. So many women are battling with matters of the heart. Relationships and how they interact in their experiences with men, that is a core for many, many women. Experiences, having had negative experiences with fathers in some type of way, whether the father has been absent or present. So that has made a difference. I see women trying to, balance having, careers and the desire to have children or family, so many, mental health, things, because, women of color in particular, we have just been built in a way where, we don't always process through pain. We just keep working. We just keep going. And so we have so many functional women who are depressed and still moving along without having dealt with some of those different things. So there are just I've seen so many different things, of course, self-esteem and security issues and, this comparison, the spirit of comparison that we're dealing with. So just a lot of different things, this idea of having to move fast to make sure that you're ahead. And so it's so many different things that women, that women are dealing with and are battling and pushing through every single day that I get a chance to see up close and personal as, I'm in relationship with them and as I engage with them on a ministry and even business level.
You mentioned something that I've dealt with many years, being a beauty industry professional, that whole comparison thing. With women, I think that is, and I tell people all the time, women don't dress for their man, even as much as they want to think that they that they do.
Yeah,
they dress for other women.
Yeah, and other
women. She ain't gonna pick me up. She ain't gonna tell me my stocking's torn. She ain't gonna look at my toenails and tell me mine. I said, because half the stuff women concern themselves with, they man could care less. They like them just in a pair of jeans and a T-shirt.
That's so true. So true.
What can we give our young women, particularly, so that they can? And it might just be a nature of life, that they do that. But is there something that we can give them foundationally that will keep them from beating up on themselves and destroying potentially relationships in the process by this whole comparison thing?
My only answer is identity. The only thing we can give them is identity. The more they know who they are, the less likely they are to compare. Because even some of the strongest women do it. Do you know what I mean? And so I think just in the world that we live in, particularly with social media, when we're watching people every day, 24 hours a day, day in, day out, sometimes it can feel inevitable, but I think the more we impart to them about who they are and how amazing they are, how unique they are, how beautiful they are, how God created them, how they're so special, I think that they will be less likely to feel like they need to ever compare themselves to anybody else. And so I think that identity and call and purpose are the things that really kind of help to kill and combat that spirit of comparison.
Amen. I'm on a mission to help in that matter.
Yeah.
You have a book called She's Lit. Tell us about that.
So She's Lit, really just kind of in speaking about what we just talked about, comparison. She's Lit is a Bible. It is a book that focuses on igniting the light of Christ in women. And so, what I was personally doing at the time was finding out, things in myself so that my light could shine, the light of Christ through me could shine. And your light can't shine if you are constantly trying to dim the light of somebody else or put on somebody else's light. You just can't do it. And so I wanted a practical devotional that is filled with daily prayers, 40 daily prayers, and scriptures that focus specifically on light, along with quotes that kind of help women ignite the light that they have in them as relates to what God has given to them. So that's what She's Lit is about. Typically the world looks at the word lit as being intoxicated or drunk or, partying or whatever it might be. It's not always derogatory, but in many cases it is. And so I wanted to just put a twist on that to say, we are lit, but we are lit from the inside out. And we are lit by the everlasting light and a light that empowers us to be who we are. And that's what I believe about God. I believe He empowers us to be to walk in the fullness of what He created in us. And so that's what She's Lit is about.
Great work. I really appreciate you joining me as we close today. I want to ask you a question because you're such a great example of that. A woman who is in ministry, a leader in business, and is a lady all at the same time. Give our listeners on how they can balance all of that. They can be powerful and be a leader in their sphere of influence, but still be a lady and be graceful.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much. It's such a huge compliment. I think one of the biggest compliments that anybody can give to me is that I'm a balanced woman, and that means a lot to me. So, I'm a woman first. I'm a woman first in every sense of the word. And so, I believe wholeheartedly that women can be fully feminine and fully graceful and powerful at the same time. You don't have to be one or the other. I think for a long time, society has made us feel that if you are beautiful, you must be stupid. If you are something else, they've just made these lines, making us feel like we have to be either or. And I'm never going to be either or. I fully embrace every aspect of who I am, and I would encourage women to do the same thing. As it relates to balancing all of those things, I always tell people, there's a way that we balance in terms of our day and our life and schedules, and I think that just takes strategy. I think in terms of balancing our core and our spirit and who we are authentically takes relationship with God and relationship with people who are always going to be honest with you, people who are healthy in your life. I think that those are the ways that we maintain balance. I maintain balance by doing everything that I just said, and also, looking at other women that I admire who walk in that level of grace. I will always love Felicia Rashada. She fully embodies that, whether on television or off of television. That's who she is. So there are just women that I look to that have that level of grace that, I desire to aspire to, whether they are stars or even, women that I know locally, in the same light. So, I try to read. I'm constantly reading. I'm traveling. I'm exposing myself to different things. And I think that that's how you keep that balance. That's how you keep that gracefulness. Don't let life make you hard. Don't let, circumstances make you hard, because when you become hard on the inside, it's so easy to become hard on the outside. And so I think it's just a matter of continuing to do that work, having a therapist, having healthy outlets for you to stay healthy and continue on a process of wholeness. So I think that that's how you operate in a space of balance, being able to say no, self-care, doing all of those type of things. And just like I said, remaining spiritually grounded, being clear about who you are and what you were placed on this earth to do, I think makes a difference.
Well said, my friend. Well, Miss Karri, I appreciate you joining me. Give our listeners, the website or information they need to get the book and learn more about your ministry.
If you want to reach me, you can reach me on my website at www.karriturner.org, KarriTurner.org, or you can follow me on social media. My Instagram handle is MzKarriBaby, so Ms. Karri Baby on Instagram, and it's Karri Turner on Facebook. So you can order She's Lit or the Girl Bible from my website, or you can get them from Amazon.com.
All right, Karri, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much, and you have our prayers and thoughts. Well, this has been the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. I'm your host, Cornell Jermaine. Until next time, let your soul be made whole. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Build on Beauty podcast. For more information about our host, please visit CornellJermaine.com.